This is the first video I've done on the Corvette, but definitely won't be the last. What I did this time is reroute the brake line that runs down around the differential. I did that about 3 years ago, and the footage, the beginning footage, is 3 years old, and there's put about 60,000 miles on it. And I have no regrets of doing this at all. It has never caused any problem whatsoever, and I've had the transmission out once more since I did it, and it does make everything a lot easier. So the early footage is old, and right now I'm going to crawl back under it and show you what it looks like now, because for some reason when I did it, I didn't take any finished pictures of it. So it is a good mod as far as I'm concerned, especially if your brake lines are rusty like mine were. But check it out, see what you think. It does make it easier to pull the transmission. All right, here's what we're working with. Your stock brake lines come in, they run along the tube. They come in here and they go up and over. You can see right there, there's a joint, a coupler above the differential. And in this car, they're both rusty. Then the lines come down the backside. They wrap around the diff, and then they loop down on each side below the axles, and then they curl back around to the brake line, the rubber brake lines that go to the calipers. The problem is, the way this is set up, you have to pull your axles on each side out of the differential in order for the lines to clear and go up on each side of the differential. Anytime you pull the axles out, you're running the risk of leak, damaged seals. You know, if you don't already have that problem, you could end up with it after you do this. Plus, you have to worry about the brake lines clearing the differential as you lower this whole assembly down. Now, this is a big chunk of metal. I mean, you're lowering that whole assembly down all the way to the front, torque tube and all. So you don't really need anything else to have to mess with. Plus, you can't see it, but down in where the brake lines go down into the cradle, well, they turn around, they're rusty in there too. So I'd like to replace the brake lines just as a maintenance item. But while I'm doing it, I might as well reroute them someplace that they're not in the way. My plan is to cut in along this section here, flare them, use couplers, and bring the line down through this area, and then curl it around here to where it fits on to the line going to the calipers. And if I route it in this area here, I can completely clear the cradle, it'll clear the exhaust line, and nothing will be in the way. Now that's on the driver's side line. Oops, sorry. The other one to go to the passenger side, I'll cut into the same place, coupler. It will have to go up over the differential, or up over the transmission, and then come down over in this area. Same deal, cross this area in front of the cradle, and then come back around to its junction there. And while I'm in here, I might as well go ahead and replace the old stock rubber lines with braided steel. Okay, since this is the Vet, you know, it's a special car to me. I wanted to do everything as good as possible. So I went and bought some new tools to do this project. I bought 25-foot coil of your standard zinc 3/16 brake line, some assorted fittings to go on it. What I bought new was the Eastwood on-car 3/16 flaring tool, nice deburring tool, and then I got the new stainless lines front and rear. This tool, I watched a couple of videos on it. I'll show you how to use it too. It looks like, as far as like it says, it's doing it on the car will be much easier. I've got several of the regular style, the beam type that you clamp together, and while they do an okay job, they're not very good for working in a tight area under the car. So this should be a lot nicer tool. Make sure to deburr everything inside and out. Make a nice smooth flare. All right, we're back under the vet. Right there is where I cut into the factory lines and spliced. This line on the driver's side goes up behind the exhaust. There we go. Through that gap and right up to the coupler. Goes into the stainless steel hose going over the caliper. The other side, sorry about that, it goes up and over the top of the transmission, drops down behind the exhaust, and right over to that side. It is a little closer to the exhaust than what it would be factory, but it's definitely got a nice air gap. I've changed the fluid once since I've done this. It wasn't dark, it didn't look burnt, so that's not an issue. Never had any braking issues whatsoever. But I'll go around back. You can see where it completely got it out of the way of the transmission in the cradle. See that? Nothing in the way anymore. So if you're going to pull the transmission, I suggest rerouting the line. Makes things easier in the future, makes it easier now. And this is a 2004 C5Z06. And I think they're all routed the same way, so it shouldn't be an issue. Just make sure when you're cutting the lines and splicing in to not let your master cylinder go dry. You know, it's going to leak out a little bit slowly, but wasn't an issue. But if you let air get in the system, you'll have to end up bleeding your ABS pump, which is not a big deal if you've got the proper tools. But best just not to get any air in there to start with. And in case you were curious why I ended up pulling the transmission twice, the first time was a clutch job. Put everything back in, everything worked fine, and then I ended up rebuilding a buddy's transmission out of his vet that had second gear synchro problems, and I found a bunch of other issues in the transmission while I was in there. And then I'm like, my car has more mileage. It has a couple of small issues with barely going into reverse and things like that. So it's like, I'm going to go ahead and take it out. And sure enough, I found numerous problems in mine. So when I rebuilt both of them, corrected all the issues, everything's been great ever since. Like I said, I've put 60,000 miles. Yeah, about 60,000 miles since I did all this work. So I drive my vet a lot. I like it. Till next time.